Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, my dear devotees. Today we are hearing from Canto 7, Chapter 5, text number 56 and 57. My dear King Yudhishthira, all the children were very much affectionate and respectful to Prahlad Maharaja, and because of their tender age, they were not so polluted by the instructions and actions of their teachers, who were attached to condemned duality and bodily comfort. Thus the boys surrounded Prahlad Maharaja, giving up their playthings, and sat down to hear him. Their hearts and eyes being fixed upon him, they looked at him with great earnestness. Prahlad Maharaj, although born in a demon family, was an exalted devotee, and he desired their welfare. Thus, he began instructing them about the futility of materialistic life. The word, purport by Srila Prabhupada, the words Bala Adusita Diya indicate that the children, being of a tender age, were not as polluted by materialistic life as their fathers. Prahlada Maharaja, therefore, taking advantage of the innocence of his class friends, began teaching them about the importance of spiritual life and the insignificance of materialistic life. Although the teachers, Sanda and Amarka, were instructing all the boys in the materialistic life of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, the boys were not much polluted. Therefore, with great attention, they wanted to hear from Prahlad Maharaj about Krishna consciousness. In our Krishna consciousness movement, the Gurukula plays an extremely important part in our activities because right from childhood, the boys at the Gurukula are instructed about Krishna consciousness. Thus, they become steady within the cores of their hearts, and there is very little possibility that they will be conquered by the modes of material nature, when they are older. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prahlada Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranya Kashipu. Canto 7, chapter 6, text number 1. Prahlada Maharaj said, one who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The whole purpose of Vedic civilization and of reading the Vedas is to attain the perfect stage of devotional service in the human form of life. According to the Vedic system, therefore, from the very beginning of life, the brahmacharya system is introduced so that from one's very childhood, from the age of 5 years, one can practice modifying one's human activities so as to engage perfectly in devotional service. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 2.40, Swalpam api asiddharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little advancement on the path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Okay, what is the most dangerous type of fear? That's to, after having the human form of life, in their next life, they take the body of an animal. Modern civilization, not referring to the verdicts of Vedic literature, is so cruel to the members of human society that instead of teaching children to become brahmacharis, it teaches mothers to kill their children, even in the womb, on the plea of curbing the increase of population. And if the chance a child is saved, he is educated only for sense gratification. Gradually, throughout the entire world, human society is losing interest in the perfection of life. Indeed, men are living like cats and dogs, spoiling the duration of their human lives by actually preparing to transmigrate again to the degraded species among the 8,400,000 forms of life. The Krishna consciousness movement is anxious to serve human society by teaching people to perform devotional service, which can save a human being from being degraded again to animal life. As already stated by Prahlad Maharaja, Bhagavata Dharma consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. In all the schools and colleges and universities and at home, all children and youths should be taught to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, they should be taught to hear the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, to put them into practice in their lives, and thus to become strong in devotional service, free from fear of being degraded to the animal life. Following Bhagavad Dharma has been made extremely easy in the age of Kali. The Shastra says, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Katiranyata. One need only chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Everyone engaged in the practice of chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra will be completely cleansed from the core of their heart and be saved from the cycle of birth and death. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text number 2. The human form of life affords one a chance to return home, back to Godhead. Therefore, every living entity, especially in the human form of life, must engage in devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord Vishnu. This devotional service is natural because Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the most beloved, the master of the soul, and the well-wisher of all other living beings. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Bhaktaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram surhidam sarvabhutanam gyattvamam santam richati. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the Supreme Lord of all planets and the demigods and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries, simply by understanding these 3 facts: that the Supreme Lord Vishnu is the proprietor of the entire creation, that He is the best well-wishing friend of all living entities, and that He is the supreme enjoyer of everything. One becomes peaceful and happy. For this transcendental happiness, the living entity has wandered throughout the universe in different forms of life and different planetary systems. But because he has forgotten his intimate relationship with Vishnu, he has merely suffered life after life. Therefore, the educational system in the human form of life should be so perfect that one will understand his intimate relationship with God or Vishnu. Every living entity has an intimate relationship with God. One should therefore glorify the Lord in the adoration of Santa Rasa or revive Salya Rasa or a conjugal lover in Madhurya Rasa. All these relationships are on the platform of love. Vishnu is the center of love for everyone, and therefore the duty of everyone is to engage in the loving service of the Lord, as stated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavatam 3.25.38, Yesam ham priya atmastutascha sakha guru suhrido daivam istam. In any form of life, we are related with Vishnu, who is the most beloved, the super soul, son, friend, and guru. Our eternal relationship with God can be revived in the human form of life, and that should be the goal of education. Indeed, that is the perfection of life and the perfection of education. Text number 3. Sukham aidrin yakam daitya deha yogena dehinam sarvatra labhate daivad yata dukam ayatnata. Prahlada Maharaja continued, My dear friends, born of demoniac families, the happiness perceived with reference to the senses, to the sense objects, by contact with the body, can be obtained in any form of life, according to one's past fruitive activities. Such happiness is automatically obtained without endeavor, just as we obtain distress. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the material world, in any form of life, there is some so-called happiness and so-called distress. No one invites distress in order to suffer, but still it comes. Similarly, even if we do not endeavor to obtain the advantages of material happiness, we shall obtain them automatically. This happiness and distress are obtainable in any form of life, without endeavor. Thus, there is no need to waste time and energy fighting against distress or working very hard for happiness. Our only business in the human form of life should be to revive our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become qualified to return home, back to Godhead. Material happiness and distress come as soon as we accept a material body, regardless of what form. We cannot avoid such happiness and distress under any circumstances. The best use of human life, therefore, lies in reviving our relationship with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Text 4. Endeavors merely for sense gratification or material happiness through economic development are not to be performed, for they result only in a loss of time and energy with no actual profit. If one's endeavors are directed toward Krishna consciousness, one can surely attain the spiritual platform of self-realization. There is no such benefit from engaging oneself in economic development. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We see materialistic persons busily engaged in economic development all day and all night, trying to increase their material opulence, but even if we suppose that they get some benefit from such endeavors, that does not solve the real problem of their lives. Nor do they know what the real problem of life is. This is due to a lack of spiritual education, especially in the present age. Every man is in darkness in the bodily conception of life, not only anything of the spirit soul and its needs. Misguided by the blind leaders of society, people consider the body to be everything, and they are engaged in trying to keep the body materially comfortable. Such a civilization is condemned because it does not lead humanity toward knowing the real goal of life. People are simply wasting time and the valuable gift of the human form because a human being who does not cultivate spiritual life but dies like the cats and dogs is degraded in his next life. From human life, such a person is put into the cycle of continuous birth and death. Thus, one loses the true benefit of human life, which is to become Krishna conscious and solve life's problems. Text number 5. Tato yateta kushala kshemaya bhavam asrita sariram porusham yavan na vipadyeta pushkalam. Therefore, while in material existence, bhavam asrita, a person fully competent to distinguish wrong from right must endeavor to achieve the highest goal of life as long as the body is stout and strong and is not embarrassed by dwindling. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As stated by Prahlada Maharaj at the beginning of this chapter, Ko Mara Acharet Prajna. The word prajna refers to one who is experienced and who can distinguish right from wrong. Such a person should not waste his energy and valuable human life simply working like a cat or dog to develop his economic condition. For one word in this verse, there are two readings, bhavam asrita and bhayam asrita. But accepting the meaning of either of them will bring one to the same conclusion. See, it's too long, this thing. You have to pull this over here as to come to this point. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj at the beginning of this chapter, Ko Mara Acharet Prajna. The word prajna refers to one who is experienced and who can distinguish right from wrong. Such a person should not waste his energy and valuable human lifetime simply working like a cat or dog to develop his economic condition. For one word in this verse, there are two meanings, bhavam asrita and bhayam asrita. But accepting the meaning of either of them will bring one to the same conclusion. Bhayam asrita indicates that the materialistic way of life is always fearful because at every step there is danger. Materialistic life is full of anxieties and fear. Bhayam. Similarly, accepting the reading bhavam asrita, the word bhavam refers to unnecessary trouble and problems. For want of Krishna consciousness, one is put into bhavam, being perpetually embarrassed by birth, death, old age, and disease. Thus, one is surely full of anxieties. Human society should be divided into a social system of brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, and sudras. But everyone can engage in devotional service. If one wants to live without devotional service, his status as a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, or sudra certainly has no meaning. It is said, stanad borasta patanti adha. Whether one is in a higher or lower division, one certainly falls down for want of Krishna consciousness. A sane man, therefore, is always fearful of falling from his position. This is a regulative principle. One should not fall from his exalted position. The highest goal of life can be achieved as long as one's body is stout and strong. We should therefore live in such a way that we keep ourselves always healthy and strong in mind and intelligence, so that we can distinguish the goal of life from a life full of problems. A thoughtful man must act in this way, learning to distinguish right from wrong and thus attain the goal of life. Text number 6. Every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years. But for one who cannot control his senses, half of those years are completely lost because at night he sleeps 12 hours, being covered by ignorance. Therefore, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Lord Brahma, a human being, and an ant all live for 100 years, but their lifetimes of 100 years are different from one another. This world is a relative world, and its relative moments of time are different. Thus, the 100 years of Brahma are not the same as the 100 years of a of a human being. From the Bhagavad Gita, we understand that Brahma's daytime of 12 hours equals 4,300,000 times 1,000 years. Sahasra yugam paryantam aharyat brahmano vidu. Thus, the Varsasatam, or 100 years, are relatively different according to time, person, and circumstances. As far as human beings are concerned, the calculation given here is right for the general public. Although one has a maximum of 100 years of life, by sleeping one loses 50 years. Eating, sleeping, sex life, and fear are the 4 bodily necessities, but to utilize the full duration of life, a person desiring to advance in spiritual consciousness must reduce these activities. That will give him an opportunity to fully use his lifetime. Okay, now that is a very profound statement. It says, as far as human beings are concerned, the calculation given here is right for the general public. Although one has a maximum of 100 years of life, by sleeping one loses 50 years. Eating, sleeping, sex life, and fear are the 4 bodily necessities, but to utilize the full duration of life, a person desiring to advance in spiritual consciousness must reduce these activities. That will give him an opportunity to fully use his lifetime. Yes, so the eating, sleeping, sex life, fear are 4 bodily necessities, but to utilize the full duration of life, a person desiring to advance in spiritual consciousness must reduce these activities. That will give him an opportunity to fully use his lifetime. Text 7. In the tender age of childhood, when everyone is bewildered, one passes 10 years. Similarly, in boyhood, engaged in sporting and playing, one passes another 10 years. In this way, 20 years are wasted. Similarly, in old age, when one is an invalid, unable to perform even material activities, one passes another 20 years wastefully. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Without Krishna consciousness, one wastes 20 years in childhood and boyhood, and another 20 years in old age. And when one cannot perform any material activities and is full of anxiety about what is to be done by his sons and grandsons and how one's estate should be protected, half of these years are spent in sleep. Furthermore, one wastes another 30 years sleeping at night during the rest of his life. Thus, 70 out of 100 years are wasted by a person who does not know the aim of life and how to utilize this human form. Text number 8. One whose mind and senses are uncontrolled becomes increasingly attached to family life because of insatiable lusty desires and very strong illusion. In such a madman's life, the remaining years are also wasted because even during those years he cannot engage himself in devotional service. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is the account of 100 years of life. Although in this age, a lifetime of 100 years is generally not possible. Even if one has 100 years, the calculation is that 50 years are wasted in sleeping, 20 years in childhood and boyhood, and 20 years in invalidity or jara vyadi. This leaves only a few years. But because of too much attachment to household life, those years are also spent with no purpose, without God consciousness. Therefore, one should be trained to be a perfect brahmachari in the beginning of life, and then to be perfect in sense control, following the regulative principles. If one becomes a householder, from household life, one is ordered to accept vanaprastha life and go to the forest and then accept sannyasa. This is the perfection of life. From the very beginning of life, those who are ajitendriya, who cannot control their senses, are educated only for sense gratification, as we have seen in the Western countries. Thus, the entire duration of a life of even 100 years is wasted and misused. And at the time of death, one transmigrates to another body which may not be human. At the end of one's 100 years, one who has not acted as a human being in a life of tapasya, austerity, and penance, must certainly be embodied again in a body like those of cats, dogs, and hogs. Therefore, this life of lusty desires and sense gratification is extremely risky. Wow. Okay, we have more time? Yeah. Text number 9. What person too attached to household life, due to being unable to control his senses, can liberate himself? An attached householder is bound very strongly by ropes of affection for his family, wife, children, and other relatives. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prahlada Maharaj's first proposal was Komara acharit pragyo dharmam bhagavatam iha. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. Dharman Bhagavatam means the religious principle of reviving one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For this purpose, Krishna personally advises, Sarvam Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Saranam Braja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. While in the material world, we manufacture so many duties in the name of so many isms, but our actual duty is to free ourselves from the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. For this purpose, one must first be liberated from material bondage, and especially from household life. Household life is actually a kind of license for a materially attached person by which to enjoy sense gratification under regulative principles. Otherwise, there is no need of entering household life. Before entering household life, one should be trained as a brahmachari. living under the care of the Guru, whose place is known as the Guru Kula. Brahmachari Guru Kule Vasan Danto Gurur Hitam. Bhagavatam 7.12.1. From the very beginning, a brahmachari is trained to sacrifice everything for the benefit of the Guru. A brahmachari is advised to go begging alms door to door, addressing all women as mother, and whatever he collects goes to the benefit of the Guru. In this way, he learns how to control his senses and sacrifice everything for the Guru. When he's fully trained, he likes, if he likes, he is allowed to marry. Thus, he is not an ordinary grihasta who has learned only how to satisfy his senses. A trained grihasta can gradually give up household life and go to the forest to become grihasta, and to become increasingly enlightened in the spiritual life, and at last take sannyasa. Prahlada Maharaja explained to his father that to be freed from all material anxieties, one should go to the forest, hitvat ma patam griham andakupam. One should give up his household life, which is a place for going further and further down into the darkest regions of material existence. The first advice, therefore, is that one must give up household life, griham andakupam. However, if one prefers to remain in the dark well of household life because of uncontrolled senses, he becomes increasingly entangled by ropes of affection for his wife, children, servants, house, money, and so on. Such a person cannot attain liberation from material bondage. Therefore, children should be taught from the very beginning of life to be first-class brahmacharis. Then it will be possible for them to give up household life in the future. To return home, back to Godhead, one must be completely free from material attachment. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga means Vairagya Vidya, the art that can help one develop a distaste for material enjoyment. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayat Yasuvairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Bhagavatam 1.2.7. If one engages in devotional service from the beginning of life, he easily attains Vairagya Vidya, or Asakti detachment, and becomes Jitendriya, the controller of his senses. One who perfectly engages in devotional service is therefore called Goswami or Swami, master of the senses. Unless one is master of the senses, he should not accept the renounced order of life, sannyasa. A strong inclination for sense enjoyment is the cause of the material body. Without full knowledge, one cannot be unattached to material enjoyment. But as long as one is not in that position, one is not fit to return home back to Godhead. Well, the emphasis here is on giving up all forms of sense gratification and being engaged in the loving service of Krishna. There's also, in a sense gratification by loving Krishna, but it's for pleasing Krishna, not for pleasing oneself. Text number 10. Money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. Honey is sweeter than money. No, money is sweeter than honey. No. uh, money is as being sweeter than honey. Therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money, especially in household life? Thieves, professional servants, soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money even by risking their very dear lives. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. How money can be dearer than life is indicated in this verse. Thieves may enter the house of a rich man to steal money at the risk of their lives because of trespassing. They may be killed by guns or attacked by watchdogs, but still they try to commit burglary. Why do they risk their lives? Only to get some money? Similarly, a professional soldier is recruited into the army, and he accepts such service with the risk of dying on the battlefield, only for the sake of money. In the same way, merchants go from one country to another on boats at the risk of their lives, or they dive into the water of the sea to collect pearls and valuable gems. Thus, it is practically approved, and everyone will admit that money is sweeter than honey. One may risk everything to acquire money, and this is especially true of rich men who are too attached to household life. Formerly, of course, the members of the higher castes, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, everyone but the Sudras, were trained in the Gurukula to adhere to life of renunciation and sense control by practicing brahmacharya and mystic yoga. Then they were allowed to enter household life. There have consequently been many instances in which great kings and emperors have given up householder life, although they were extremely opulent and were the masters of kingdoms. They could give up all their possessions because they were taught early as brahmacharis. Prahlada Maharaj's advice is therefore very appropriate. Komara acharet pragno dharmam bhagavatam iha durlabam manasam janma tad api adruvam artaham. One who is sufficiently intelligent should use the human form of body from the very beginning of life, in other words, from the tender age of childhood, to practice the activities of devotional service, giving up all other engagements. The human body is most rarely achieved, and although temporary like other bodies, it is meaningful because in human life one can perform devotional service. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Human society should take advantage of this instruction. Text 11 to 13. How can a person who is most affectionate to his family, the core of his heart, being always filled with their pictures, give up their association? Specifically, a wife is always very kind and sympathetic and always pleases the husband in his solitary place. Who could give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear, and their affectionate father always thinks of their sweet words. How could he give up their association? One's elderly parents and one's sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who could give up that association? Aside from this, in household life affairs, there are many decorated items of household furniture, and there are also animals and servants. Who could give up such comforts? The attached householder is like a silkworm, which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out, simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, the genitals and the tongue. One is bound by material conditions. How can one escape? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In household affairs, the first attraction is the beautiful and pleasing wife, who increases household attraction more and more. One enjoys his wife with two prominent sense organs, namely the tongue and the genitals. The wife speaks very sweetly. This is certainly an attraction. Then she prepares very palatable foods to satisfy the tongue. And when the tongue is satisfied, one gains strength in the other sense organs, especially the genitals. Thus, the wife gives pleasure in sexual intercourse. Household life means sex life. Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukam hitucham. This is encouraged by the tongue. When there are children, a baby gives pleasure by speaking sweet words in broken language. And when the sons and daughters are grown up, one becomes involved in their education and marriage. Then there are one's own father and mother to be taken care of, and one also becomes concerned with the social atmosphere and with pleasing his brothers and sisters. A man becomes increasingly entangled in household life, so much so that leaving them becomes almost impossible. Thus, the household becomes griham, under kupam, a dark well into which the man has fallen. For such a man to get out is extremely difficult unless he is helped by a strong person. The spiritual master, who helps the fallen person with the strong rope of spiritual instructions. A fallen person should take advantage of this rope, and then the spiritual master, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, will take him out of this dark well. Whoa, boy, I don't want to be in that dark well. Text 14. One who is too attached cannot understand that he is wasting his valuable time for the maintenance of his family. He also fails to understand that the purpose of human life, a life suitable for realization of the absolute truth, is being imperceptibly spoiled. However, he is very cleverly attentive to seeing that not a single farthing is like money, is lost by mismanagement. Thus, although an attached person in material existence always suffers from threefold miseries, he does not develop a distaste for the way of material existence. Oh, that's a mistake. We should have a distaste for material existence. Purport. A foolish man does not understand the values of human life, nor does he understand how he is wasting his valuable life simply for the maintenance of his family members. He is expert in calculating the loss of pounds, shillings, and pence, but he is so foolish that he does not know how much money he is losing, even according to the material considerations. Chanakya Pandita gives the example that a moment of life cannot be purchased in exchange for millions of dollars. A foolish person, however, wastes such a valuable life without knowing how much he is losing. Even according to monetary calculations, although a materialistic person is expert in calculating costs and doing business, he does not realize that he is missing his costly life for want of knowledge. Even though such a materialistic person is always suffering threefold miseries, he is not intelligent enough to cease his materialistic way of life. Well, that is a very sad situation. Unfortunately, too many people are encumbered in that situation today. Text 15. If a person too attached to the duties of family maintenance is unable to control his senses, the core of his heart is immersed in how to accumulate money. Although he knows that one who takes the wealth of others will be punished by the law of the government and by the laws of Yamaraj before death, he continues cheating others to acquire money. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Especially in these days, people do not believe in a next life or in the court of Yamaraj and the various punishments of the sinful. But at least one should know that one who cheats others to acquire money will be punished by the laws of the government. Nonetheless, people do not care about the laws of this life or those governing the next. Despite whatever knowledge one has, one cannot stop his sinful activities if he is unable to control his senses. Text 16. O my friends, O sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider this is mine and that is for others. Thus, they're always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of family life. Just like uneducated cats and dogs, they are unable to take to spiritual knowledge. Instead, they are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In human society, there are attempts to educate the human being. But for the animal society, there's no such system, nor are the animals able to be educated. Therefore, animals and unintelligent men are not vimuda, or ignorant, bewildered, whereas an educated person is called vidvan. The real vidvan is one who tries to understand his own position within this material world. For example, when Sanatana Goswami submitted to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his first question was, Ke ami, kene amaya, chare tapa traya. In other words, he wanted to know his constitutional position and why he was suffering from the threefold miseries of material life, of material existence. This is the prowess of education. If one does not ask, who am I? What is the goal of my life? But instead follows the same animal propensities as cats and dogs, what is the use of his education? As discussed in previous verses, as discussed in the previous verse, a living being is entrapped by his fruitive activities, exactly like a silkworm trapped in his own cocoon. Foolish persons are generally engaged by their fruitive actions, karma, because of a strong desire to enjoy this material world. Such attracted persons become invaded in society, community, and nation, and waste their time not having profited from having obtained human forms. Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, great leaders, politicians, philosophers, and scientists are all engaged in foolish activities, thinking, this is mine and this is yours. The scientists inventing nuclear weapons and collaborate with the big leaders to protect the interests of their own nation or society. The scientists invent nuclear weapons and collaborate with the big leaders to protect the interests of their own nation or society. In this verse, however, it is clearly stated that despite their so-called advanced knowledge, they actually have the same mentality as cats and dogs. As cats and dogs and other animals, not knowing their true interest in life, become increasingly involved in ignorance. The so-called educated person who does not know his own self-interest or the true goal of life becomes increasingly involved in materialism. Therefore, Prahlada Maharaja advises everyone to follow the principles of Varnashrama Dharma. Specifically, at a certain point, one must give up family life and take to the renounced order of life to cultivate spiritual knowledge and thus become liberated. This is further discussed in the following verses. Stop? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And think very, think very seriously about what we have heard this morning. Our takeaway for today is the following. In human society, there are attempts to educate the human being, but for animal society, there is no such system, nor are animals able to be educated. Therefore, animals and unintelligent men are called vimuda, or ignorant, bewildered, whereas an educated person is called vidvan. The real vidvan is one who tries to understand his own position within this material world. For example, when Sanatana Goswami submitted to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his first question was, Keami, Keneya Maya Jari Tapa Traya. In other words, he wanted to know his constitutional position and why he was suffering from the threefold miseries of material existence. This is the process of education. If one does not ask, who am I? What is the goal of my life? But instead follows the same animal propensities as cats and dogs, what is the use of his education? As discussed in the previous verse, a living being is entrapped by his fruitive activities exactly like a silkworm, trapped in its own cocoon. Foolish persons are generally engaged by their fruitive actions, or karma, because of a strong desire to enjoy this material world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Watch out, be careful, and take seriously what we're hearing, because this is real knowledge. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Okay.
What to sing? Okay. Not sing? No, not sing. Kartal say? No, that's fine. Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jayo Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya
Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva. Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. Bandhu moyi savadhana mate. Bandhu moyi savadhana mate. Jahara prasade bhai ye bhava turiya jai. Jahara prasade bhai ye bhava turiya jai. Krishna prapti ho jaha hote. Krishna prapti ho jaha hote. Guru mukha padma vakya chitte koriya aikya. Guru mukha padma vakya chitte koriya aikya. Arana kori ho mane asha. Arana kori ho mane asha. Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati. Sri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati. Ye prasade pure sarva asha. Ye prasade pure sarva asha. चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित. दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित. दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित. प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते. भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते. वेद गाय जहाँ चरित. वेद गाय जहाँ चरित. श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधामा जनारा बंधु. श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधामा जनारा बंधु. लोकेना लोकेरा जीवाना. लोकेना लोकेरा जीवाना. श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना. श्रीला प्रभुपाद पतित पावना. आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया. आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पादा छाया. ये बेजा जिसु त्रिभुवाना. ये बेजा जिसु त्रिभुवाना. ये बेजा जिसु त्रिभुवाना. ये बेजा जिसु त्रिभुवाना. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले. श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले. श्रीमते भक्ति इति नामिने. नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे. निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे. नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे. निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद. श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव
Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Prem Shri Kaho Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mayapura Dham ki jai, Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled, all glories to the assembled, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Lokanatha Goswami, O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shelter of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.